Slipknot wasn't supposed to survive their success. After their surprise breakout debut, their label wanted them to clean up, go mainstream, and rake in millions, but instead they did the exact opposite.
My art's fucking more than money. I'm sick of this fucking business. I'm sick of all this shit that comes with it.
By the time they entered the studio for their second album, they were at war with the industry, with their own success, and most of all with themselves.
We will come here and we will kill you!
We were just all very chemically imbalanced. I mean, to put it lightly, we were all fucked up. You know, we were kids who were suddenly famous, and we became every cliche that we hated.
Addiction, rage, and self-destruction fueled a record so violent it nearly shattered the band. It was too brutal for the radio, too raw for the critics, and so destructive it nearly killed the band that made it. And yet it became their defining masterpiece. This is the story of Iowa. Slipknot's 1999 debut was a chaotic mask-wearing middle finger to the mainstream, and somehow it worked. They blew up worldwide, and naturally, the pressure was on for a follow-up. So when it came time for album number 2, the label they were signed to, Roadrunner Records, had a bright idea. Make it cleaner, make it catchier, and make it more radio friendly. You know, something a little more polished and less brutal. You know, something like Linkin Park or Limp Bizkit. Slipknot thought about it for exactly 0 seconds before doing the exact opposite and cranked the brutality up to insane levels.
Limp Bizkit, somebody in Limp Bizkit had the audacity to say to one of our good friends, who's a very reliable source, that Slipknot fans are nothing but a bunch of fat, ugly kids.
Slipknot was always the odd one out in nu metal. They had the energy, the aggression, and the melody, but they never really played by the genre's rules. Corey Taylor wasn't into rapping. Their sound was way heavier than their peers, and most importantly, they didn't sound like anyone else. They were their own beast from the start.
As far as labeling Slipknot a nu metal thing, I think that really kind of came down to A, the timing when we came out, and B, the fact that we were still kind of using a lot of like hip hop elements and whatnot. But I think honestly we were more of a precursor to what they called the new wave of American heavy metal. I thought we were kind of like filling in that gap.
Every nu metal band had their niche. System of a Down were the political revolutionaries. Linkin Park blended cyberpunk with emotional intensity. Korn perfectly merged brutal metal with hip-hop swagger. And Limp Bizkit were the soundtrack to every frat party meltdown. Slipknot felt different. They didn't simply sound aggressive. They came across as truly primal and unpredictable, something that felt genuinely dangerous, and that's exactly why they stood out.
But we don't want to fucking send out a positive message, or this is the way you need to fucking live your life, or this is the way you need to fucking do things, because this is fucking heavy, aggressive, pissed off fucking music, and it doesn't need to be responsible, and I'm not gonna fucking be responsible because it's not supposed to be like that.
From day one, Slipknot was all about excess. 9 members, 2 DJs, and 3 percussionists, including a drummer and 2 maniacs pounding on kegs, power tools, and a custom-built monstrosity of jagged metal. They initially set out to make the loudest, most chaotic, disturbing noise imaginable. While Fred Durst told frat boys to break stuff, Slipknot, in their matching jumpsuits and horror movie masks, set their own gear on fire, broke bones mid-show, and bled, puked, pissed, and probably worse, right on stage.
We will come here and we will kill you!
Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson had their own brand of horror. But at the end of the day, Zombie was an art school grad and Manson was a gothic intellectual with a taste for controversy, while Corey Taylor and the rest of the band were pure desperation.
Started smoking cigarettes when I was 10. I started doing coke and speed when I was about 13. By the time I was 15, I had OD'd twice. I woke up in a dumpster because I was at a party, and I guess I OD'd. And instead of taking me to the hospital, they threw me in a dumpster. So I kind of woke up, and I think because of that, it jostled my system and actually kind of helped me survive. And I woke up. I went back to my house, and shortly after that, we went to visit my grandmother in Des Moines, and I ended up staying and never going back. So.
Oh, okay.
Pretty crazy.
That kind of goes into the next.
These were guys who worked overnight shifts at gas stations and adult video stores, battled addiction and homelessness as teenagers, and rehearsed in a basement lined with pet store carpet that reeked of piss. Every ounce of their frustration, isolation, and rage was funneled into one goal: escape Iowa by any means necessary. Slipknot's self-titled debut, recorded at the iconic Indigo Ranch with legendary nu metal's producer Ross Robinson, became an instant cult favorite. It went platinum in 3 months and earned them a spot on Ozfest '99.
So what about this live show today? People always talk about your live shows like, okay, well, look at your clothes and stuff like that. What can you tell us about this tour that is starting today and the shows?
Well, we've been off for a little bit, so tonight will be pretty fucking crazy.
First Ozfest tour, and I have a very unique perspective from it because I couldn't talk. I'd fried my voice.
Wow.
Literally about a month before we went out on the road.
That's terrifying.
I ate too soon before a rehearsal, and then went to rehearsal, and then I had acid reflux really bad. It fried my vocal cords to the point where they put me on oral steroids. I had to gargle with this crazy shit, and so I couldn't talk. I could sing for a half hour a day, and they said you have to do absolute pure vocal rest for at least 2 months. And I was just like, oh, so I carried a pad of paper around.
Oh,
and
man.
for real,
Yeah.
I took it very seriously.
Sure.
I quit smoking. I didn't drink the entire time. I hadn't really done drugs really. So all I did was really just drink coffee and water. I ate once we were done and everything, but I didn't talk. So I walked around with a fucking pad of paper, all of Ozfest. So I'd waited my whole life for the big tour, right? And here it is, and the great big mouth can't make a fucking noise, right? And I was just like, of course this happens. Of course this happens.
Sure, they had the turntables and the speed rap vocals that made metal purists groan, but Slipknot wasn't some label orchestrated commercial gimmick. These were serious musicians who were rooted in the heaviest corners of metal.
I just remember us being so nuts and so excited to be there that nothing got its say. It was one of the few times in the beginning where we all really were still on the same page, because there were times after that.
Sure.
That we started to pull apart for whatever reason.
Right. So now
in that beginning, man, we were a fucking unit, dude. Nobody fucked with us, and we didn't fuck with anybody who didn't have it coming.
The result? The fastest selling debut metal album in history, without critics or mainstream media backing them.
Barcoded for money, and my art's fucking more than money. I'm sick of this fucking business. Sick of all this shit that comes with it. It can all fuck off.
Well, what pisses you off?
You?
When fame hit Slipknot, it felt like a prison. The industry squeezed, expectations mounted, and every member cracked under the weight. They drank, they fought, they drowned in substances, turning on each other like caged animals. Depression wasn't just looming, it was inevitable. But instead of letting it consume them, they channeled every ounce of their rage, pain, and despair into Iowa, a record that to this day, it stands as their most raw, violent, and emotionally excruciating work. Slipknot didn't just want Iowa to be heavy, they wanted it to hurt. So they brought back Ross Robinson, the so-called godfather of nu metal, a producer infamous for breaking artists down and squeezing every last drop of agony into the mix.
Also, we were working with Ross, who at the time was, a god, just in that genre, period. He's just one of the greatest ears for primal, emotional sludge metal,
Robinson didn't just sit down with a Starbucks cup and press record. He played mind games, pushed limits, and turned studios into battlegrounds. But the results, abso-fucking-lutely legendary.
And the records he made created a genre that essentially even created subgenres that are still coming out today.
Let's talk about Ross Robinson for a second, because that guy, first of all, Korn was his first big break, but then he did Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna.
I know later on he did that one Norma Jean album, Redeemer.
Yeah.
He did. There's a couple other good albums he's done that are just.
Glassjaw was another one. So okay, let's see. Albums produced. These are just.
And
produced,
with Slipknot teetering on the edge of self-destruction, it made Iowa less of an album and more of a full-blown exorcism. The making of this album was straight up masochistic.
Working with Ross was intense as shit. We did 12 songs the first night we were there, and the whole time he is throwing potted plants at us.
In between recording sessions, Sid Wilson got the news that his grandfather died and had a complete breakdown. Instead of comforting him, Robinson hit record and turned his grief into an eerie sample. But the most unhinged moment belonged to Corey Taylor, who pushed himself beyond human limits while recording the album's title track.
Iowa is about spending time with a corpse. Don't judge me. Just doing beautiful, fucked up things to it. And it's not like I was setting out to write a song like that. That's what the music really just fucking, pointed me in the direction towards, I, half the time, take my cues from what the music is making me feel instinctually. And that song, musically alone, is just so fucking creepy and heavy that it makes you just want to punch nuns and babies. Obviously, I was a little fucked up when I recorded it, stripped naked. I wish you could have seen Clown's face. He was in the fucking control room, and there's this little window in the fucking control room, and I just start taking it off. And he's just I only sang this song twice, to be honest. And in doing that twice, I broke every piece of glass that I could find, and then started cutting myself up. And you can hear me actually on the recording doing that. You can hear me with every cut, with every scream. It was almost like method at that point, I wanted to go so fucking deep into it that I was willing to go past the point of no return, but I wanted to do it to myself, And I got done, and I'm basically cleaning myself up, and Clown just comes in, and this is coming from Clown, and he just goes, "Taylor, what the fuck is wrong with you, man?"
We'll talk more about this track in a second. Ross Robinson wasn't just producing Iowa, he was surviving it, During production, a motocross accident left him with a broken back. Any sane person would have taken time off, but not Robinson. He used the pain as fuel. Sid Wilson would later tell he was in a wheelchair, all fucked up and in pain, and you could hear him screaming in pain while he was producing the album. Imagine recording an album so intense that even the guy behind the glass is howling in agony. That's Iowa. That's the sound of suffering turned into art.
Yeah, I find, like, if I'm in a physical or an emotional distress, that I do push an artist that I'm working with even further to give me that opiate release. Like, something happens when the amazing performance kicks.
Yeah.
It's like just painless and free, and it's been a trip to discover, you know, like a great performance that heals actually permeates outside through the actual recording as well.
Slipknot was self-destructing in the studio, but for Sean Clown Crahan, the real horror was waiting outside those walls. His wife had fallen seriously sick, and while the rest of the band drowned themselves in drugs, booze, and misery, all he wanted was to be with her. And instead of being by her side, he was trapped in a studio, buried in the industry machine, making an album while his life outside crumbled. And for what? Slipknot had blown up, but they were still broke. No big checks, no financial safety net, just pure grinding frustration. That fury, that helplessness, that hate, it seeped into every drum hit, every scream, every second of Iowa. Slipknot was exhausted, resentful, and ready to tear each other apart.
We were just all very chemically imbalanced. I mean, to put it lightly, we were all fucked up. You know, we were kids who were suddenly famous, and we became every cliche that we hated.
The studio turned into a war zone. No one was having fun.
And we were making a hugely anticipated album. So we just started getting fucked up because we were from Iowa and we were crazy people, you know? So in a way, it was a pitfall that we fell into, and then slowly but surely we kind of tried to pull ourselves out of it. And sometimes it's hard, you know, especially when you're, you know, hitting the shit as hard as we were, you know? I mean, because we were working hard, we were playing hard, we were just crazy hard.
And from that chaos, they created an album as brutal as the experience itself. A song like Skin Ticket doesn't happen by accident. It's the sound of a band on the brink, unstable, self-destructive, and willing to scrape the deepest pits of misery just to feel something. It's a full-blown psychological breakdown set to music, and nothing before or after has touched that level of rawness. These days, Corey Taylor plays it safer, and his approach to music has become polished, perhaps even predictable. But back then, he sounded like a man possessed, and tore his soul apart with every scream. The 15-minute title track of Iowa, it's a descent into madness. Corey Taylor doesn't sing or scream so much as vomit his thoughts in real time. His deranged ramblings laced with manic laughter, guttural shouts, and the kind of primal agony you don't fake. Behind him, eerie female screams claw at the void, bass lines slither like something rotten, and droning guitars grind the last bits of sanity into dust. It feels like a full-body exorcism stretched over 15 minutes of pure psychological torment. His screams on Iowa are legendary, so much so that fans coined the term Iowa Scream.
Okay, so on YouTube I've seen a lot of Slipknot vocal covers and a lot of tutorials on how to do the Iowa Scream, or the old school Corey Scream circa 1999 to 2002. And you can tell just from listening to them that it's not the same. They don't have the power, like the just rough power that Corey had around that era.
His voice is guttural, raw, and downright brutal. Honestly, it's a miracle he didn't shred his vocal cords recording this album. Every belt, every agonized wail sounds painful, but that's exactly what makes it work.
I grabbed one of the candles, I threw it against the wall as hard as I can, wax went across his face, and he's like, screaming into the floor. It was so good.
He goes full death metal on Metabolic, matching the album's hellish atmosphere with pure throat-ripping intensity. But that doesn't mean he can't sing. His cleaner vocals on Left Behind and My Plague prove just how versatile he really is.
Wow. His vocals give me fucking chills. Like the fucking like grunge and roar and evilness in his vocals is just gives me goosebumps.
And if the vocals on the album are a mental breakdown, the guitars are the soundtrack to the apocalypse. Jim Root, who joined Slipknot halfway through their debut's recording, became a full-time member here, and alongside Mick Thompson and bassist Paul Gray, helped craft some of the most unsettling, unhinged riffs the band had ever recorded. The off-kilter, out-of-tune intro to Disaster Piece feels like something is about to detonate, while the chorus riffs in The Shape and the already mentioned Skin Ticket sound like something clawing its way out of hell. They were warping sound itself, paving the way for the band's future sonic experiments. People Equal Shit is Slipknot's manifesto of disgust. Corey Taylor calls out the parasites destroying everything in their path, like the corporations gutting the planet for profit, or the bullies who make life hell for others. Either way, Corey's got no patience left. He knows people will hate him for it, but he's past the point of caring. Too fucked to beg and not afraid to care. This isn't diplomacy, it's war. Disaster Piece is psychotic. Corey Taylor takes childhood trauma, shoves it into a pressure cooker, and unleashes one of the most brutal opening lines in music history. Corey isn't just angry, he's haunted by the past, still trapped in the shadow of someone who made his life hell. His rage is so overwhelming it confuses him. Hate ain't enough to describe me, somewhere between screaming and crying. I'm not supposed to be here. The last track I feel it's important to discuss is New Abortion. It's a rallying cry for Slipknot's fans, the outcasts who grew up feeling unheard. Corey Taylor is giving voice to the pain of an entire generation stuck in a system that tells them how to live, what to say, and who to be. The song's title is provocative for a reason. Taylor twists the word abortion into a metaphor for those who feel like they've been denied the chance to truly live. How's it feel to be the new abortion, the only generation to suffer extortion? To be a new abortion in Slipknot's world isn't to die, it's to never truly live, to be trapped in a cycle where speaking out makes you the enemy. Everything we say is taken with a grain of salt, man. It's a furious rejection of control, a snarling reminder that those who refuse to conform will always be seen as a threat.
Is it the heaviest album of all time? I would say no, but it's definitely the heaviest album to ever chart this high or have this level of mainstream success. Pretty amazing.
In case it wasn't obvious by now, Iowa is not a feel-good album. Corey's lyrics cut straight to the band's worldview: bitter, angry, distrustful, and drowning in paranoia. The album is relentless. It doesn't guide you through its misery. It drags you by the legs, kicking and screaming, through a non-stop assault of chaos.
It's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane...
Somewhat surprisingly, Iowa wasn't held back by its sound. If anything, it was held back by history. Released on August 28, 2001, the album barely had time to breathe before September 11th shattered the world. And in a cruel twist of fate, Slipknot was supposed to launch the Pledge of Allegiance tour with System of a Down that very day. The timing was unfortunate. The world was in shock, and whatever momentum Iowa could have had was instantly swallowed by the chaos of a world forever changed. We had to pass on a lot of tours because of fear, Taylor told Revolver. It wasn't a good time for the country, but it wasn't a good time for us either. We got banned at a lot of radio stations and MTV wouldn't touch us. Still, Iowa went platinum across multiple countries and even scored Grammy nods for Left Behind and My Plague. But let's be real, Slipknot has never made another album like this. Sure, they've gotten more technical, experimented with their sound, and still crank out bangers, but they've never returned to the level of self-inflicted hell they found in 2001. And maybe that's for the best. Because if they had, there's a good chance they wouldn't have made it out alive. The idea that artists must suffer to create is a dangerous myth, but Iowa is proof of what happens when a band endures absolute darkness and turns it into something unforgettable. This album embodies everything that makes metal powerful, the ability to tap into raw human emotion, no matter how ugly, and transform it into something visceral. You can argue about labels all day, grindcore, mallcore, nu metal, who cares? At the end of the day, this is metal. Yeah, Slipknot wears masks, and their image can be theatrical and even goofy at times, and sure, they achieved mainstream success. But, so what? Peel all that back, and what's left? A band that hits harder, screams louder, and gets way uglier than half the so-called real metal acts out there. If you're into aggressive music, this should be right up your alley. The only thing standing in the way is you.